Welcome to the Pointy End. I'm Keith Sutherland. Today my guest is Sue Nuttall from Rural Australia for Refugees Bendigo branch. So why Rural Australia Refugees Bendigo? Because I know it's an important topic, but it's fabulous that we've got a branch here in Bendigo.
Well, it's a fairly long-standing organisation, started a number of years, maybe just after 2000, and groups started in New South Wales, Rural Australians for Refugees, and then they were taken up in other regional areas, and Bendigo became a place where we have one here.
It's a big talking point these days. We see what's going on overseas, we see what's going on in Australia, our policy, and both parties are identical, and now the turn back to boats. It's just, to me, it's a very inhumane policy. Is that part of the reason that your organisation got involved, because not really happy with the direction this has all been happening?
Yes, absolutely, and that's been existing over the years. I mean, it is extraordinarily sad that such a very few number of people can raise such an inhumane policy. And I mean, if you look at Australia's numbers in immigration, would you know how many immigrants there are per year? Just normal immigrants who come in on a visa? About 200,000. And then if we look at, say, 10 years of people who've come in on boats without a visa, and that's not illegal to do, what would you think the number would be? Because it's talked of as if it's a flood. So if we've got 200,000 normal immigrants, what would you think a flood of asylum seekers would be?
5,000, 10,000?
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years, sorry.
Over
50,000.
50,000. Well, that's hardly a flood.
No.
I mean, if you're looking at 200,000 immigrants per year, then 50,000 over 10 years is a very small percentage of the number of immigrants we actually have.
And I listen to your point that they're not illegal. Australia is a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention, which recognises refugees. People, we don't talk about this. Tony Abbott never talks about that they're allowed to come here, seeking asylum, regardless of whether they've got their visas or whether they've got their identity documents, but we keep referring to them as illegal when they're not illegal under the terminology of the UN Convention. So it just bugs me when I hear that.
It is really sad, and it's also the people who actually are illegal, something like 60,000 per year of people who've come in on visas are actually existing in the country illegally. That's not asylum seekers, that's people who've come in legally on visas. So the language is just, well, it's just abysmal. It's just really, really sad that we seem to have had to highlight a few number of people because of some sort of political idea that this will bring votes if you can show that you're doing something. Because it's been so visible, then it's possible to sort of say something like, we're going to stop the boats. And that becomes something that happens, but it doesn't mean much in terms of the numbers. And so we're treating these people very inhumanely for a political purpose.
What really gets me is that we hear about this, Tony Abbott, the three-word slogan, we've stopped the boats. Well, they haven't stopped the boats are still coming. They're turning them back. We see what's happened in Italy in the last 12 months. 50,000 people have arrived in Italy, lots more than 50,000, they've taken 50,000. There are still 1,600 people die at sea. There are still people dying at sea on their way to Australia. It's just an appalling situation, but it seems to be a populist idea with the public. The public think, well, we don't want any more. We're being overrun by refugees. How do we change it? Because both sides of politics are going along with the same notion and policy. But how do we change it? How do we change that thinking? Because you and I are obviously on the same wavelength, but the general public are not. So that's the problem.
Well, it has to be a regional solution. I mean, refugees around the world, there are millions, okay? Not many are actually trying to get to Australia in the end, but if we got together with Indonesia, if we spent the money that is being spent on detention centres in Nauru and Manus Island, something like, it costs $450,000 per annum per person to keep those people as an act of punishment to try and show that, okay, you're not allowed here. If we spent that money getting together with Indonesia, with Malaysia, and we created a better regional solution, surely that would be far better. I mean, in terms of the money, if they save that money, that would actually cover all the Gonski money that was needed, all the money that was needed for all the reforms. So it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, and when you see $55 million has gone to Cambodia for 4 refugees to be settled there, and the amount of money, what you're talking about here is just incredible amount of money.
Yep.
Then you saw on program last night on 7:30, Nauru, with the alleged corruption that's happening there, money changing hands.
Yes.
And then you see the tents, the inhumane treatment.
Yep.
Julian Triggs is not allowed to talk about it. So what's your thoughts on that situation that she came out with a fairly damning report, not on either side of politics, on the actual detention of children and the centres themselves.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion of how she's being treated at the moment?
I think extremely badly. And I mean, if you look at the last thing with Peter Dutton making some statement that he hadn't even read what she'd said and how she'd said it, but it seems as if they wanted to demonise her as a sort of a deferring people from thinking about what is actually happening. And that's just very poor. I mean, she's acted very bravely and she's continued to act as she is the Commissioner for Human Rights. So
that's her role as the President
absolutely.
To highlight some of these things. Anyway, you and I could talk a lot about the refugee policy. You've got a very exciting thing happening this weekend, Out of the Darkness, being held from the 13th of June to the 21st. Can you tell me a little bit about it and what it is all about?
Okay, well, it's a freestanding exhibition. It's been put together by members of the Queenscliff Rural Australians for Refugees group, and they've done paintings, artwork, craft work, text, and they set this exhibition up in a 9 by 9 metre space, and very fortunately St Paul's Cathedral are allowing us to set it up there. And because it's Refugee Week, it's particularly important to have it at this time. And it is something where you walk through and you read about the situation of asylum seekers having escaped from persecution and having tried to come to a place where they would be free from persecution. But as it happens, of course, they're not. And it's just a very moving exhibition, and I can really recommend it to everybody to come and read the facts, see the stories, the human face behind people who are leaving their homes elsewhere in the world because of persecution.
And that's a sad fact. We talk about all the things that are going on, and this is wonderful that Out of the Darkness, it's free entry to see the persecution. We see the Rohingyas, the most persecuted people in the world, jumping on boats. If I was living in those conditions and I was being persecuted, my children were, I would jump on the first boat to get out of the country as well.
We all would, Keith.
And
I mean,
it's common sense, but I just it saddens me so much to think that people say they're illegal, they're filling our country up, they've got to stay there. But you're right. If we could spend some of that money to come up with a regional policy, we could. The money would be well spent, and it would be resettling it. And we've got to get back to the core issue: why are the people leaving? And we've got to try and assist those governments to try and look after their people better, but we just don't seem to be interested in that part. We're just doing these terrible policies, turn them back, let them drown in someone else's backyard, but not ours. It's appalling. I
couldn't agree with you more, Keith.
Well, Sue, I hope that the Out of the Darkness exhibition is very successful. You've been promoting it very well. I've got the little brochure here and another one, so that hopefully people can go to St Paul's this coming the 13th. Maya Street, Bendigo, free entry,
all week.
And just look at it. I'll certainly be going
10 to 4 all week. And because it's Refugee Week, we've also got a couple of other things happening. On Tuesday night, Chris Cummins, who was a torture and trauma counsellor on Christmas Island for 5 years, she's talking at the old church on the hill. And
that's on Thursday night, is it?
No, that's Tuesday night.
Tuesday night, was it? Yeah, I did read it. Yep.
And on Thursday, we've got a fundraising effort at Blue Illusion, so we're hoping to get people along to that to try on some clothes, and the money from that will go direct to the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre in Melbourne.
And they're in Williamson Street, Blue Illusion, so wonderful that they've got on board to support it. And yes, you're right, ladies can come along and try on the dresses and part of the funds go. That's wonderful. Well, Sue, keep up the good work, because I just think it's wonderful that a group and organisations like yourself, regional Australians, that are supporting refugees, because it's really a sad indictment on our wealthy community that we treat them so appallingly.
Thanks, Keith. It's good to know that there are people like you out there.
And yourself.